They say you can smell a lie if you pay attention. Perfume on a collar. Lipstick on a sleeve. But what if the lie doesn't smell like anything at all? What if it comes wrapped in kindness, in duty, in something that looks exactly like love? For 7 months, I believed my husband was saving lives every Wednesday afternoon. Hello, my name is Margaret Hayes. I'm 73 years old, and I live in a modest brick house in the Wallingford neighborhood of Seattle, Washington. These days, my hands shake a little when I thread a needle, and my knees complain on rainy mornings. But my memory? Sharp as the day it all fell apart. Let me take you back to 1952. I was 24 then. A young mother with 2 babies, Tommy, who had just turned 5, and little Grace, barely 3 years old. We lived in a rental house near Green Lake, close enough to hear the geese honking on summer mornings. The house was small, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with cracked linoleum. But it had a backyard with a cherry tree, and on Sundays after church, we'd spread a blanket underneath it and pretend we were rich. My husband's name was Robert. Robert Hayes. He worked as a bookkeeper for a shipping company downtown. Steady work. Steady paycheck. Steady man, I thought. He wasn't handsome in a movie star way. His nose bent slightly to the left from a childhood accident. His hair had started thinning before we even married. But he had kind eyes. Brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled at the children. And he always came home. That mattered more than anything in 1952. Every morning, Robert left the house at 7:15. He wore the same gray suit, the same narrow tie, carried the same brown leather briefcase. He'd kiss my forehead, ruffle Tommy's hair, touch Grace's cheek with 1 finger while she slept in her crib. Be good for your mother, he'd say to Tommy. Then he'd be gone until 6. It was a routine I could set my watch by. Until March. One Tuesday evening, Robert came home whistling. He hung his hat on the hook by the door and loosened his tie. The company's starting a new program, he announced, washing his hands at the kitchen sink. They want us to donate blood at the hospital. If we do it monthly, we get a half day off. I looked up from the pot roast I was basting. Blood donation? Yeah, Swedish Hospital, just a few blocks from the office. The company doctor says it's good for community relations. Shows we care about our neighbors. He dried his hands on the towel, smiling. I'm doing it tomorrow, Wednesday afternoon. I remember feeling proud. My Robert, giving blood to help strangers. Will it hurt? I asked. Probably. He shrugged. But it's the right thing to do. The next Wednesday, he came home later than usual. Around 7:30. His sleeve was rolled up, and there was a small cotton ball taped to the inside of his elbow. How'd it go? I asked, setting his dinner plate on the table. Fine. A little dizzy afterward. They made me sit and drink orange juice. He smiled, tired. But I feel good about it. I made him his favorite dessert that night. Apple pie with cinnamon. A man who gives his blood deserves something sweet. The following Wednesday, same thing. And the Wednesday after that. By the 4th week, I noticed he'd started dressing nicer on Wednesdays. A newer shirt. His good cufflinks. A splash of aftershave I'd bought him for Christmas but he'd never worn. You're getting fancy for the blood bank, I teased one morning. He laughed. Just trying to look respectable for the nurses. The comment landed soft. I didn't think anything of it. Not until my brother came to dinner in April. Henry worked nights as a maintenance supervisor at Swedish Hospital. He was 8 years older than me, a bachelor who lived alone and took his meals wherever he could get them. I'd invited him over for Sunday pot roast, same as always. We were sitting at the table, Tommy making a mess with his mashed potatoes, Grace singing to herself in her high chair when I mentioned Robert's blood donations. "He's so dedicated," I said, passing Henry the gravy boat. "Every single Wednesday. The company must really appreciate him." Henry's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Every Wednesday?" He set the fork down slowly. "Margaret, you can't donate blood every week." "What do you mean?" "Your body needs time to replace what you've given. 6 weeks minimum. Sometimes 8. They won't even let you through the door if you've donated recently." The room felt smaller suddenly. Quieter. "Maybe it's a different program," I said. My voice sounded far away. Henry looked at Robert, then back at me. "Maybe." But his eyes said something else. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Robert's Wednesdays in my mind. The nice shirts. The aftershave. The extra time he spent in the bathroom before leaving. The orange juice story. The cotton ball taped to his arm. I got out of bed and went to the laundry hamper in the corner of our bedroom. Found Wednesday's shirt at the bottom. Held it up to the moonlight coming through the window. The collar smelled like perfume. Not mine. Something floral. Young. And there, on the inside of the right cuff, the faintest smudge of pink. Lipstick. Not my shade. I sat on the floor of that dark bedroom, holding my husband's shirt, and something inside me went very, very still. The next morning, I called Swedish Hospital. "I'm calling about the company blood drive," I said to the receptionist. "My husband works for Pacific Shipping. I wanted to confirm the schedule." A pause. Papers shuffling. "Ma'am, we don't have any corporate blood drives scheduled this month." "Are you sure? Every Wednesday?" "No, ma'am. We have individual walk-ins, but no company programs." I thanked her and hung up. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I didn't confront Robert that night. Or the next. I watched him instead. Studied him the way you'd study a locked door you're trying to open without a key. He hummed while shaving on Wednesday morning. Checked his hair twice in the mirror. Left the house at 1 o'clock instead of his usual time, whistling the same tune he'd whistled the day he first mentioned the blood drive. I fed the children an early lunch. Told them Mommy had an errand to run. I asked Mrs. Patterson next door to watch them for an hour. She'd done it before. She asked no questions. I took the bus downtown. Got off 3 blocks from Swedish Hospital. Walked the rest of the way with my heart beating in my throat. The hospital was a tall brick building with white columns at the entrance. I'd been there once before, when Grace was born. I remembered the smell. Disinfectant and floor wax and something underneath that was harder to name. Sickness, maybe. Or fear. I went inside. Walked down the main corridor like I belonged there. Nurses passed me without looking. A doctor in a white coat rushed by, his shoes squeaking on the polished floor. I found the blood donation area by following the signs. It was on the 2nd floor, at the end of a long hallway with windows overlooking the parking lot. There was a small waiting room. Empty chairs. A water cooler in the corner. And past that, through a glass door, I could see the donation room itself. That's where I saw them. Robert was sitting in a reclining chair, his sleeve rolled up. But there was no needle in his arm. No bag collecting blood. Just him and a young woman in a white nurse's uniform, standing close. Too close. She was pretty. Dark hair pinned under her cap. A heart-shaped face. She couldn't have been more than 22. She was laughing at something Robert had said. Her hand rested on his shoulder. And then so fast I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. He pulled her down and kissed her. Not a peck. Not a friendly brush of lips. A real kiss. The kind that makes the world stop spinning for a moment. I stood there in that hallway, one hand pressed flat against the glass. Watching my husband kiss another woman in a room where people were supposed to give blood. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for my hand to leave a mark on the glass. Long enough for a passing orderly to ask if I was all right. Yes, I whispered. I'm fine. I wasn't fine. I walked out of that hospital the way you walk out of a burning building. Fast. Focused. Not looking back. I took the bus home. Picked up the children from Mrs. Patterson. Made dinner. Meatloaf and green beans. The same dinner I'd made 100 times before. When Robert came home at 7, I was setting the table. How was your day? He asked, kissing the top of my head. Quiet, I said. He rolled up his sleeve to show me the cotton ball taped to his arm. Fresh. Perfectly placed. Another successful donation, he said, smiling. I smiled back. And while he ate his meatloaf and told the children a story about a shipment of oranges from California, I sat at that table and made a decision. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. Not yet. First, I would plan. Because a woman with 2 small children and no income of her own doesn't get to have the luxury of rage. She gets to be smart instead. Silence, I learned, has its own weight. It sits on your chest in the morning when you pour coffee for a man whose lips have touched someone else's. It follows you to the grocery store when you count pennies and wonder how much of your husband's paycheck is buying flowers for another woman. It holds your hand at night when you lie next to him in the dark, listening to him breathe, wondering if he's dreaming of her. For 3 weeks after I saw Robert kiss that nurse, I said nothing. I became a student of my own marriage. I watched. I listened. I took notes in my head the way a detective might, cataloging evidence in a case I hadn't yet decided to prosecute. Robert came home every Wednesday at 7:30. Always the same cotton ball on his arm. Always the same story about orange juice and dizzy spells. Always the same kiss on my forehead before dinner. But other things changed. He started working late on Fridays. Extra bookkeeping, he'd say. Month-end reports. His paycheck got smaller. Not dramatically. Just $5 here, $7 there. When I asked about it, he'd shrug. New tax withholding, he'd say. Or, union dues went up. I stopped asking. Instead, I started checking his pockets before I did the laundry. On a Thursday in May, I found a receipt folded small in his trouser pocket. Chandler's Jewelry on 4th Avenue. $18.50. For a silver bracelet with a heart charm. I'd never received jewelry from Robert. Not even a wedding ring with a stone. Just a plain gold band from the pawn shop on our wedding day, which he'd said was more practical. I put the receipt back exactly where I'd found it. That Sunday after church, I walked past Chandler's on my way to the market. The window display showed the same bracelet. Delicate, pretty, the kind of thing a young woman would wear. The kind of thing a bookkeeper's wife would never be able to afford. I bought a pound of ground beef and went home. The mathematics of my situation were simple. Brutal, but simple. I had 2 children, no job, no money of my own. Robert's name was on the lease. His name was on the bank account. In 1952, a woman couldn't even open her own account without her husband's signature. If I confronted him, he might leave. Or worse, he might stay and make me feel crazy for seeing what I'd seen. Either way, I'd be trapped in a house with a liar, dependent on his income, raising his children while he spent our money on someone else. If I left him, where would I go? Back to my mother's house with 2 babies? She was already caring for my father, who'd had a stroke the previous winter. There wasn't room. There wasn't money. And the shame. God, the shame. A divorced woman in our neighborhood might as well wear a sign. The church ladies would stop inviting me to potlucks. Mrs. Patterson wouldn't let her daughter play with Grace anymore. Tommy would get teased at school. Your mama couldn't keep her husband. I'd heard them say it about Betty Morse when her husband left her for his secretary. I'd seen how quickly she became invisible. I couldn't let that happen to my children. So I made a different kind of plan. My mother had taught me to sew when I was 12. Nothing fancy. Hemming skirts. Replacing buttons. Mending torn seams. After I married Robert, I'd made most of Grace's dresses myself. Cotton prints from the fabric store. Simple patterns. It saved money. One afternoon, Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door holding a blue dress. "Margaret, I'm sorry to bother you," she said. "But I'm desperate. My niece's wedding is Saturday, and this dress is too long. I don't suppose you could?" "Of course," I said. I hemmed it that evening after the children were in bed. Perfect, even stitches. Pressed the fabric smooth. Folded it carefully in tissue paper. When Mrs. Patterson picked it up the next day, she pressed $2 into my hand. "Oh, I couldn't," I said. "Please. You saved me." The alterations place downtown wanted $3.50 in a week's time. $2. It wasn't much. But it was mine. Word spread the way it does in neighborhoods like ours. Mrs. Chen asked me to take in her husband's suits. The Anderson girl needed her prom dress adjusted. Someone's mother needed curtains shortened. I worked in the evenings after Robert went to bed. The old Singer sewing machine my mother had given me rattled on the kitchen table. I kept the radio low. Measured twice. Cut once. My hands remembered what my grandmother's hands had taught my mother, what my mother's hands had taught me. $5 here. $3 there. I kept the money in an empty Folgers coffee can at the back of the cupboard, behind the flour and sugar. Every week, I'd count it. Smooth out the bills. Stack the coins. It wasn't enough to leave. But it was enough to feel like maybe someday it could be. Robert didn't notice. Or if he did, he didn't care. He was distracted. Happier, even. He whistled more. Smiled at nothing. Started buying the good coffee instead of the store brand. Business is good, he'd say when I asked about it. But his paychecks kept shrinking. In June, I found another receipt. The Olympic Hotel. Room service for two. $12.75. My hands shook when I held it. That night at dinner, Robert told the children about the salmon run at the Ballard Locks. We should go see it, he said. Make a day of it. Pack a picnic. Tommy's eyes lit up. Really, Dad? Sure. Sport. Maybe next Sunday. We never went. The following Wednesday, Robert came home with a new tie. Navy blue with thin silver stripes. Expensive looking. Where'd you get that? I asked. The guys at work chipped in. Birthday gift. Your birthday was in March. Belated, he said, not meeting my eyes. I served him pot roast. He ate 3 helpings. Complimented my cooking. Helped Tommy with his arithmetic homework at the table while I washed dishes. He was a good father when he was home. That was the worst part. I wanted to hate him completely. It would have been easier. But I'd watch him teach Tommy how to tie his shoes, or see him carry Grace on his shoulders through the park. And some small part of me would remember why I'd married him in the first place. That small part made everything harder. One Saturday in July, Robert said he had to work. The quarterly reports, he explained. They need them by Monday. He put on his good suit. The new tie. Aftershave. For the office? I asked. Want to make a good impression on the boss, he said, kissing my cheek. After he left, I stood in the kitchen for a long time. Then I walked to the telephone in the hallway and did something I'd been too afraid to do before. I called his office. The switchboard operator answered. Pacific Shipping. Yes. Hello. I'm calling for Robert Hayes in accounting. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the office is closed Saturdays. Can I take a message for Monday? My voice came out steady. Calm. No message. Thank you. I hung up. My hands found the coffee can in the cupboard. Counted again. $23.40. Not enough. That evening, I took Tommy and Grace to the park. We fed the ducks at Green Lake. Grace threw bread into the water, laughing when the ducks fought over the pieces. Tommy skipped stones, counting how many times they bounced. Mama, why are you crying? Grace asked, looking up at me with her serious brown eyes. I touched my face, surprised to find it wet. Just the wind, sweetheart, I said. But there was no wind that day. When we got home, Robert was already there. He'd changed into casual clothes. Was reading the newspaper in his chair. How was work? I asked. Exhausting, he said. But we got it done. I put the children to bed. Read them their favorite story. Kissed their foreheads. Then I went to the bedroom and lay down next to my husband in the dark. Robert, I said quietly. Do you love me? A long pause. I could hear him breathing. Of course I do, he finally said. What kind of question is that? Just wondering. He rolled toward me, touched my hair. You're my wife, Margaret. Mother of my children. Of course I love you. The words came out automatic. Rehearsed. Like something he'd practiced saying. I closed my eyes. I'm tired, I said. Me too. He kissed my shoulder. Rolled back over. Within minutes, he was snoring. I lay there until 3 in the morning, doing mathematics in my head. $23 wouldn't get me an apartment. Wouldn't pay a lawyer. Wouldn't feed 2 children for more than a week or two. But it was $23 more than I'd had a month ago. And if I could make $23 in a month, maybe I could make $50 in 2 months. $100 in 4. Maybe, if I was patient enough, smart enough, silent enough, I could build something that would set us free. The next morning, I asked Mrs. Chen if she knew anyone else who needed sewing done. My sister, she said immediately. She has 6 children. Always something that needs fixing. By the end of the week, I had 4 new customers. By the end of the month, the coffee can held $38. I didn't confront Robert about the lie, the bracelet, the hotel, the nurse with dark hair and a heart-shaped face. Not yet, because I'd learned something important in those weeks of watching and waiting. Anger is a luxury, patience is a strategy, and I was done being the kind of woman who could only afford luxuries. By September, I had $72 in the coffee can. I kept it hidden behind the flour, wrapped in a tea towel so the coins wouldn't rattle when Robert reached past it for the sugar. Every few days, I'd take it out at night after everyone was asleep. Count it, smooth the bills flat, feel the weight of possibility in my hands. $72 was a miracle. It was also nothing. Rent on a small apartment would be $40 a month. Food for 3 people, maybe 30 more. Then there were shoes, clothes, doctor visits, school supplies. The mathematics never quite worked. But I kept sewing anyway. Kept adding to the can. Kept pretending everything was normal. The pretending had become almost easy. I'd smile when Robert came home. Ask about his day. Laugh at his jokes across the dinner table. At night, when he reached for me, I'd let him. Close my eyes. Think about thread count and hem measurements and anything else that would take me somewhere far away. My mother used to say that women were good at carrying things. Groceries, babies, secrets. She was right about that. The sewing work had become steady. I had 9 regular customers now, and they'd started telling their friends. Mrs. Chen's sister brought me alterations every week. The Anderson girl's mother hired me to make bridesmaids' dresses for her niece's wedding. Even Mrs. Patterson's bridge club started coming by with projects. You have a gift, Mrs. Patterson said one afternoon, examining the dress I'd made for her. This is better than anything in the department stores. It's just practice, I said. But I felt something shift when she said it. A small spark of pride I hadn't felt in a long time. I was good at this. Maybe better than good. The Singer machine had become my companion. I knew its sounds. The way it hummed when the tension was right. The slight catch in the motor when I pushed too hard. Some nights I'd work until 2 or 3 in the morning, the kitchen lit by a single lamp, my shadow large against the wall. Robert never woke up, or if he did, he never came to check on me. On a Thursday in late September, something changed. I was at the kitchen table hemming a skirt when someone knocked on the door. It was almost 9 at night. Too late for customers. I opened it to find Henry standing on the porch. My brother. He was still in his work clothes from the hospital, his maintenance uniform wrinkled and smelling faintly of industrial cleaner. Henry? Is everything okay? Can I come in? I stepped aside. led him to the kitchen, poured him coffee even though it was old and bitter from sitting on the stove all day. He sat down heavily, didn't touch the cup. "I need to tell you something," he said. "And you're not going to like it." My hands went still. "Is it Dad?" "No. Dad's fine. He stopped, rubbed his face with both hands. "It's about Robert." The kitchen felt smaller suddenly. The walls too close. "What about him?" Henry looked at me. Really looked at me. The way you look at someone when you're trying to decide how much truth they can handle. "I see him at the hospital," he said quietly. "Every Wednesday." "I know. The blood drive." "Margaret, there is no blood drive." I sat down across from him. My legs had stopped working properly. "I know," I heard myself say. Henry's eyes widened. "You know? I saw him. In May. With the nurse." "Jesus, Margaret." He leaned back in his chair. "Why didn't you say anything?" What was I supposed to say? "I have no money. No job. 2 children." My voice came out flat. Empty. What exactly were my options, Henry? He was quiet for a long time. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was rough from years of manual work. Warm. "Her name is Linda," he said. "Linda Kowalski. She works in the recovery ward. She's 23. Originally from Tacoma." Each word landed like a stone in still water. "They're not careful," Henry continued. "They eat lunch together in the cafeteria. Take their breaks at the same time. Last week, I saw them in his car in the parking lot. He stopped. "They weren't hiding it very well." "Does everyone know?" I asked. "The hospital staff does. I don't know about his office." I pulled my hand back. Wrapped both arms around myself. "Why are you telling me this now?" Henry shifted in his chair. "Uncomfortable. Because yesterday, I heard them talking," he said. "In the hallway outside the break room. She was upset about something. Said she couldn't keep doing this. That she wanted him to make a choice." The room tilted slightly. "What did he say?" "He said he loved her. That he'd leave you. That he just needed time to figure out the finances." I stood up, walked to the sink, gripped the edge of the counter. "Behind me," Henry said. "Margaret, I'm sorry. But you needed to know." "Get out." "What?" "Get out of my house." "Margaret, now, please." I heard his chair scrape. His footsteps. The front door opening and closing. Then silence. I stood at that sink for I don't know how long. The water dripped. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. He loved her. He was going to leave me. The words played over and over in my head like a broken record. When I finally moved, it was to check on the children. Tommy was asleep with his cowboy book on his chest. Grace was curled around her stuffed rabbit. Their faces peaceful, innocent. I went to the bedroom. Opened Robert's side of the closet. Started going through his pockets. All of them. Every jacket. Every pair of pants. I found 3 more receipts. Dinner at a restaurant I'd never been to. Movie tickets. A hotel room. This one from last week. And then, in the inside pocket of his good suit jacket, I found a letter. It was folded into a small square. The paper was pale blue. The handwriting was round and girlish. "My darling Robert, I know you said we need to be patient, but it's getting harder every day. When you go home to her, I lie awake wondering if you're thinking of me. If you wish you were here instead. I understand about the money. I do. But we could make it work. I don't need much. Just you. Please don't make me wait too long. I'm not as strong as you think I am. All my love. Linda. I read it twice. 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it back exactly where I'd found it. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I felt very calm. Very clear. Like someone had turned on a light in a dark room and I could finally see the furniture I'd been tripping over for months. I went back to the kitchen. Pulled out the coffee can. Counted the money one more time. $72.60. Not enough to leave, but enough for something else. I sat down at the table and took out a piece of paper. Started making a list. Apartment rentals in the newspaper. Childcare options. Women's employment agencies. The name of a lawyer my mother had mentioned once when Betty Morse got divorced. I wrote until my hand cramped. Then I folded the list and put it in my apron pocket, right over my heart. The front door opened. Robert's footsteps in the hall. His hat on the hook. His briefcase by the stairs. "Margaret," he called. "You still up?" In the kitchen. He came in, loosened his tie, saw the coffee cup Henry had left behind. "We have company?" Henry stopped by. "Everything okay with your dad?" "Fine." Henry just needed to talk. Robert nodded. Opened the refrigerator. "Any dinner left? I can heat something up." "Don't bother. I'll just make a sandwich." I watched him move around the kitchen. Pull out bread. Slice cheese. Spread mustard. He hummed while he worked. Some song I didn't recognize. He looked happy. When he finished making his sandwich, he sat down across from me. "What are you working on?" He gestured at the sewing project on the table. Mrs. Anderson's skirt. The hem was uneven. "You've been busy lately. People keep asking." He took a bite of sandwich. Chewed. Swallowed. "Maybe you should charge more," he said. "If they're willing to pay, might as well get what you're worth." I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the face I'd woken up next to for 6 years. The man who'd promised to love me in front of God and our families. The father of my children. "You're right," I said quietly. "I should get what I'm worth." Something flickered across his face. Too quick for me to read. "Well, don't stay up too late." He stood. Kissed the top of my head. "I've got an early meeting tomorrow." "On a Friday?" "Quarterly review. Might run late." "Of course." He left. I heard him in the bathroom. Then the bedroom. The bed springs creaking as he got into bed. I stayed in the kitchen. Finished the hem on Mrs. Anderson's skirt. Started on a new project. A dress pattern I'd been thinking about. Something for myself. I worked until 4 in the morning. When I finally crawled into bed, Robert was snoring softly. I lay there in the dark, listening to him breathe. Thinking about the letter in his pocket. About Linda Kowalski, 23 years old, lying awake wanting what I had. She could have him, but she couldn't have my children. And she couldn't have the life I was about to build. The next morning, I woke up before everyone else. Made coffee. Scrambled eggs. Set the table like always. When Robert came down, I smiled at him. "Good morning." "Morning." He gulped his coffee. Glanced at his watch. "I should get going." "Before you do," I said, Keeping my voice light, I wanted to ask you something. He paused. What's that? The woman you've been seeing. Linda Kowalski. Is it serious? The color drained from his face. The kitchen went completely silent except for the clock ticking on the wall. I don't, he started. Margaret, what are you? It's a simple question, Robert. Is it serious? His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Who told you? Does it matter? He sat down heavily, put his head in his hands. It's not what you think, he said. What is it, then? It's just she makes me feel. He stopped. You're always so tired, always busy with the kids and the house. I just wanted to feel important to someone. I poured myself more coffee. Took a sip. It was bitter. I see. It didn't mean anything, he said quickly. It was a mistake. I'll end it. I promise. Don't. He looked up. What? Don't end it. I don't care anymore. Margaret, I'll need to know your schedule, though. For the children. When you're planning to be home. When you'll be with her. So I can plan accordingly. He stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. You're not leaving? Where would I go, Robert? You've made sure I have nowhere to go. I stood up, rinsed my coffee cup in the sink, dried it, put it back in the cupboard. But you should know something, I said, not looking at him. I'm done pretending. And I'm done being the kind of wife who makes things easy for you. I walked out of the kitchen. Left him sitting there at the table. Upstairs, Tommy was just waking up. I helped him get dressed. Braided Grace's hair. Made their breakfast. Walked them to school holding their small hands in mine. The morning was cool. The leaves were starting to turn. In a few weeks, it would be October. And I had work to do. For 2 weeks after our kitchen conversation, Robert and I lived like strangers in the same house. He came. He went. He slept in our bed. Ate at our table. Played with the children. But we barely spoke beyond what was necessary. I'll be late tonight. Fine. Did you pick up my dry cleaning? It's in the closet. Words like stones. Hard. Cold. Functional. The coffee can now held $94. I'd taken on more work. Started sewing past midnight most nights. My eyes burned. My fingers ached. But I kept going. Mrs. Patterson had connected me with a woman named Eleanor Blackwood who ran a dress shop downtown. Eleanor had looked at my work, really looked at it, and offered me something I hadn't expected. I could sell these, she'd said, holding up a blouse I'd made. Put your label in them. Give you 40%. 40% of something was better than 100% of nothing. I'd gone home that day and cried in the bathroom with the water running so no one would hear. On a Thursday in late October, everything came apart. I was folding laundry in the bedroom when I heard Robert's car pull into the driveway. Early. It was barely 3 o'clock. He never came home before 6. I went to the window. Watched him sit in the car for a long moment before getting out. His shoulders were slumped. His tie was loose. Something was wrong. He came through the front door. Dropped his briefcase. Didn't call out to see where I was. I found him in the kitchen, standing at the sink, staring out the window at nothing. Robert? He didn't turn around. They let me go, he said. His voice was flat. Empty. What? Pacific Shipping. They fired me today. I felt my stomach drop. Why? He laughed. A bitter sound. Does it matter? Yes. Finally, he turned to face me. His eyes were red. He looked like he'd aged 10 years since breakfast. Someone told them about Linda, he said. About the time I've been spending away from my desk. The personal calls. The long lunches. He rubbed his face with both hands. They said I was conducting inappropriate personal business during work hours. Made me pack my desk right then. Walked me out like a criminal. The kitchen was very quiet. How are we going to pay rent? I asked. I don't know. How are we going to eat? I said I don't know. His voice cracked. Jesus, Margaret. I just lost my job. Could you maybe give me 5 minutes before you start attacking me? Attacking you? Something hot rose in my chest. Robert, you've been stealing from our children to buy jewelry for your mistress. You've been lying for 7 months. And now you've gotten yourself fired. But somehow I'm the one attacking you? She's not my mistress. What is she then? He didn't answer. What is she, Robert? He stopped. Started again. She makes me happy. The words hung in the air between us. And I don't? I said quietly. You're my wife. It's different. How? With Linda, everything is easy. She laughs at my jokes. She thinks I'm interesting. She doesn't look at me like I'm failing at something all the time. Maybe that's because she doesn't depend on you to keep a roof over her children's heads. His jaw tightened. I've been a good provider. You were. Until you decided a 23-year-old nurse was more important than your family. Don't, he said. His voice was low. Dangerous. Don't you dare act like you're perfect. Like you haven't shut me out. Like you haven't made me feel like an obligation instead of a husband. I've shut you out? I stepped closer. I've made dinner every single night. I've washed your clothes, raised your children, kept this house running on less and less money while you bought hotel rooms and bracelets. And I've shut you out? You're always tired, always busy, always irritated with me. Maybe because I'm doing everything alone. I work 40 hours a week. You work 40 hours a week. And I work constantly. From the moment I wake up until the moment I collapse at night. But somehow my work doesn't count because I'm not getting paid for it. He looked away. Except I am getting paid now, I continued. My voice was shaking. The sewing work? I've made almost $100. His head snapped back. What? The alterations. The dresses. I've been saving it. For what? For this. For the moment when you finally couldn't hide what you were anymore. His face went red. What I am. I made a mistake, Margaret. One mistake. But you've been planning to leave me? You just told me Linda makes you happy. That I'm just your wife. That it's different. What exactly was I supposed to do with that? I didn't mean. Yes, you did. The truth of it settled between us like ash. Robert sank into a chair. Put his head in his hands. I love her, he said. So quiet I almost didn't hear it. There it was. The thing he'd never said out loud before. I know, I said. He looked up at me. Surprised. How long? Does it matter? Yes. Since May. I saw you. At the hospital. Through the window. All the color drained from his face. Margaret, don't. Please. We stood there. The afternoon light coming through the kitchen window was golden. Soft. Beautiful. Outside, I could hear children playing. Someone's radio. life continuing like nothing had changed. "What do we do now?" Robert finally asked. Before I could answer, there was a knock at the door. We both froze. "Are you expecting someone?" Robert asked. "No." The knock came again. Louder. I walked to the front door. Opened it. A young woman stood on my porch. Dark hair pinned back. Heart-shaped face. Pretty. She wore a blue nurse's uniform. White shoes. A cardigan over her shoulders. "Linda." My hands went numb. "Mrs. Hayes," she said. Her voice was higher than I'd expected. Nervous. "Yes. I'm Linda. Linda Kowalski. She twisted her hands together. "I need to talk to Robert." Behind me, I heard Robert's sharp intake of breath. "He's not here," I said automatically. "His car is in the driveway." Her eyes were pleading. Desperate. "Please. I just need 5 minutes." "No. Mrs. Hayes. Get off my porch. I'm pregnant," she blurted out. The world tilted. Linda's hands moved to her stomach. Protective. Instinctive. "I'm pregnant," she said again. Tears in her eyes now. "And Robert won't return my calls. He told me yesterday that it was over. That he couldn't leave you. But her voice broke. "I'm 3 months along. He has to know. He has to help me figure out what to do." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Behind me, Robert made a sound. Something between a gasp and a sob. "Get inside," I said to Linda. "What?" "Get inside. Now." She hesitated, then stepped into my house. Into my living room. The room where my children played. Where we'd celebrated Christmases and birthdays and ordinary Tuesdays. I closed the door. Robert was standing in the doorway to the kitchen. White as paper. "Linda," he said. "What are you doing here? You won't talk to me." Her voice was shaking. "You said you loved me. You said we'd be together. And now you won't even answer when I call." She stopped. Looked at me, then back at him. "Are you pregnant?" I asked. My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "Yes," Linda whispered. Robert closed his eyes. "Linda, please. Is it true?" She looked at me, then back at him. "Is it true?" He didn't answer. "Robert," Linda's voice climbed higher. "Is it true?" "Yes," he finally said. The word came out strangled. "Yes, it's true." Linda started crying. Real, ugly crying. The kind that comes from your whole body. "What am I supposed to do?" she said. "I can't raise a baby alone. I'll lose my job. My parents will disown me. I have nobody, Robert. Nobody but you. Robert's voice was strangled. "This is too much. I need to think." "You need to think?" Linda's voice climbed higher. "I've been thinking for 3 weeks. Since I missed my period. Since the doctor confirmed it. Since you stopped answering my calls. What else is there to think about?" I stood there watching them. These two people who'd been tangled up together while I made dinner and folded laundry and tucked children into bed. These two people who'd created another life while destroying mine. Something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Like ice on a frozen lake. A sound only I could hear. "Get out," I said. They both turned to look at me. "Both of you. Get out of my house." "Margaret," Robert started. "No." My voice was steel. "I don't want to hear it. I don't want explanations. I don't want apologies. I want you out." Where am I supposed to go? He asked. I don't care. Linda's apartment. A hotel. A bridge. I don't care anymore. The children will be fine. Better than fine. They'll be free of this. I pointed at him, then at Linda, free of lies and betrayal and watching their father choose someone else every single day. Linda was still crying. Mrs. Hayes, I'm sorry. I never meant. You're pregnant with my husband's child, I said. Each word deliberate. Cold. You don't get to apologize. You get to leave. But, now. She ran. Out the door. Down the steps. I watched her stumble to a car parked across the street. Watched her drive away too fast, tires squealing. Robert and I stood in the living room. You can't do this, he said. This is my house. My name is on the lease. Then I'll leave. Me and the children. Tonight. With what money? You said yourself you only have $100. I'll figure it out. Margaret, be reasonable. Reasonable? I laughed. It sounded wrong even to my own ears. You got another woman pregnant. You lost your job. You've stolen from our family. And you want me to be reasonable? I made a mistake. You made a baby. I screamed. Actually screamed. Something I'd never done before in my entire life. You made a whole entire human being with someone else. That's not a mistake, Robert. That's a choice. A series of choices. Every time you touched her. Every lie you told. Every dollar you spent. My voice echoed in the small room. Robert's face crumpled. I'm sorry. God, Margaret, I'm so sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't pay rent. Sorry doesn't raise 2 children. Sorry doesn't fix this. He sank onto the couch. Put his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. I stood there watching him cry. This man I'd promised to love forever. The father of my children. The liar. The cheater. The stranger. I felt nothing. Not anger anymore. Not even sadness. Just a vast, empty space where something used to be. Pack a bag, I said quietly. Stay with your mother. Or Linda. Or wherever. I don't care. But you can't be here when the children come home from school. Margaret, please. If you ever loved me. If you ever loved them. You'll go. He looked up at me. His eyes were red. Desperate. I do love you. I do. No, I said. You love the idea of having everything. A wife. A home. Children. And her. But you can't have both. And I'm done sharing. I walked to the bedroom. Pulled his suitcase from the closet. Started throwing in clothes. Socks. Shirts. His razor. His shoes. He followed me. Where will you go? I'll figure it out. How? The same way women always do. One day at a time. $1 at a time. I zipped the suitcase. Shoved it at him. He caught it automatically. What about Tommy and Grace? What about them? They'll ask where I am. I'll tell them the truth. That their father made choices. And choices have consequences. They're children. They won't understand. They'll understand better than you think. Children always do. I walked him to the door. Opened it. The afternoon was still golden. Still beautiful. The world was still turning. Margaret, he said one more time. His voice broken. I don't know how to do this. How to be without you. You've been without me for months, I said. You just didn't notice. He stepped out onto the porch. Turned back. I'll send money. When I find work. For the kids. Don't bother. We'll manage. I closed the door. Locked it. Put the chain on. Then I walked to the coffee can in the kitchen. Counted the money again with shaking hands. $94.25. It would have to be enough. Because in 2 hours, my children would come home. And I would have to explain why their father's car was gone. Why his coat wasn't on the hook. Why everything had changed in a single afternoon. I sat at the kitchen table. Put my head in my hands. And for the first time in 7 months, I let myself cry. Not quiet crying. Not careful crying. The kind of crying that empties you out completely. When I was done, I washed my face. Combed my hair. Started making dinner. Because the world keeps turning. Children still get hungry. Life goes on. And I had $94 and a sewing machine and 2 babies who needed me to be stronger than I'd ever been before. So that's what I became. The first night after Robert left, I didn't sleep at all. I lay in bed listening to the house settle. The refrigerator humming. The clock ticking. All the sounds that used to be background noise suddenly loud in the silence. Tommy had cried when I told him his father wouldn't be living with us anymore. Grace was too young to fully understand, but she felt it. Children always do. She clung to my leg for days, her small face serious and worried. Did Daddy stop loving us? Tommy asked one morning. I knelt down, looked him in the eyes. Your father loves you very much, I said. But sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt the people around them. And sometimes those choices mean things have to change. Is it my fault? No, sweetheart. Never. This is between your father and me. You and Grace did nothing wrong. He nodded. But I could see he didn't quite believe me. Children carry things they shouldn't have to carry. That's one of the cruelest parts of adult mistakes. The week after Robert left, I went to see a lawyer. His name was Mr. Bernard. He had an office above a bakery on Pike Street. The smell of bread filled the waiting room. He listened to my story. Took notes on a yellow pad. You have grounds for divorce, he said. Adultery. Abandonment. But it'll cost you. How much? $200. Maybe more if he fights it. I had $94.25. I'll find it, I said. He looked at me over his glasses. Mrs. Hayes, I'm going to be honest with you. Women in your position usually go back. It's easier. The shame of divorce is hard. Finding work is harder. Supporting 2 children alone? Nearly impossible. Then I'll do the nearly impossible. Something shifted in his expression. Maybe respect. Maybe pity. Come back when you have the money, he said. I'll help you. I worked. God, how I worked. Eleanor Blackwood's dress shop became my lifeline. She sold 3 of my dresses the first week. 5 the next. Women started asking for me by name. They wanted the seamstress who understood how fabric should fall. How a hem could change everything. I took in a boarder. Mrs. Chen's nephew needed a place to stay while he went to university. $20 a month. He slept on the couch and was quieter than a ghost. I sold everything that wasn't essential. Robert's good watch that he'd left in the dresser drawer. The silver candlesticks from our wedding. My mother's china that I'd never felt fancy enough to use anyway. By Christmas, I had enough for the lawyer. Mr. Bernard filed the papers in January. Robert didn't fight. He'd moved in with his mother in Tacoma and found work at a lumber mill. He sent $10 every month. Sometimes 15. Never more. Linda had her baby in May. A girl. I heard about it through Henry. She'd moved back home to her parents. They'd taken her in, but barely spoke to her. That's how it was in those days. Part of me wanted to hate her. The young nurse who'd taken what wasn't hers. But hate is exhausting. And I was too tired. Too busy surviving to waste energy on rage. The divorce was final in August of 1953. Almost exactly 1 year after I'd first confronted Robert about Linda. I remember the day the papers came. I signed them at the kitchen table while Grace colored and Tommy did his homework. Just another document. Just another Thursday. But that night, after the children were asleep, I took off my wedding ring. Held it in my palm. It was thin, worn, nothing valuable. I put it in a small box with the divorce papers. Slid the box to the back of the closet. Not as a shrine, as proof that I'd survived something I thought would destroy me. The years that followed weren't easy. But they were mine. I rented a better house. One with a room I could use for sewing. Tommy and Grace grew tall and strong. Tommy became serious and protective, the way oldest children do when they have to grow up too fast. Grace stayed quiet and watchful, but she smiled more as time passed. Robert remarried eventually. Not Linda. Someone else. A widow with no children. I heard they moved to Oregon. I didn't ask for details. Linda wrote me a letter once. It came 5 years after everything happened. The handwriting was different, steadier, more mature. Dear Mrs. Hayes, I know you have no reason to read this. No reason to forgive me. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Not the empty kind of sorry people say when they're caught. The real kind that comes from understanding what you've done. I was young and stupid and selfish. I convinced myself that love justified anything. That somehow my happiness mattered more than yours or your children's. I was wrong. My daughter is 4 now. Her name is Caroline. She's beautiful and smart and I love her more than I knew was possible. And every day, I think about what I did to your family. How I helped break something that wasn't mine to break. You didn't have to be kind. You could have destroyed me that day on your porch. Maybe I deserved that. But you just told me to leave. And somehow that was worse and better at the same time. I hope your children are well. I hope you've found peace. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I didn't understand then. With regret. Linda. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it and put it away. I never wrote back. But I stopped carrying the anger around like a stone in my chest. Forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about refusing to let their mistakes keep poisoning your life. My sewing business grew. By 1960, I had my own small shop. Not downtown. Just a storefront in Wallingford. But it was mine. My name on the window. My work on the racks. I hired 2 other women. Both divorced. Both rebuilding. We taught each other things the world hadn't taught us. How to read contracts. How to negotiate with suppliers. How to stand up straight and ask for what we were worth. Tommy went to college on a scholarship. Studied engineering. Married a good woman named Patricia who laughed easily and often. They gave me 3 grandchildren. Grace became a teacher. She never married, but she was happy. Surrounded by children who weren't her own but loved her anyway. Robert died in 1971. Heart attack. He was only 52. I went to the funeral. Not for him. For Tommy and Grace, who needed to say goodbye to the father they'd loved despite everything. At the reception afterward, his second wife approached me. "He talked about you sometimes," she said quietly. "Especially toward the end. He said you were the strongest person he'd ever known. That he wished he'd been strong enough to deserve you." I didn't know what to say to that. "Thank you for telling me," I finally said. We stood there for a moment. 2 women who'd both loved a man who hadn't quite known how to love properly. "Do you hate him?" she asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I said. "I'm grateful to him, actually." She looked surprised. "He showed me what I was capable of," I explained. "Not in the way he intended. But his betrayal woke something up in me. Something I didn't know was there. Strength. Resilience. The ability to build a life from nothing. That's generous. No, it's just true. I'm 73 now. My hands shake when I thread a needle. My eyes aren't what they used to be. The shop is closed. Sold to one of my former employees who runs it better than I ever did. I live in a small house with a garden. Tommy visits every Sunday. Grace calls twice a week. The grandchildren come by whenever they need money or advice or both. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that Wednesday in March of 1952. The day Robert first lied about donating blood. The day that started everything. If I could go back and prevent it all, the lies, the heartbreak, the struggle, would I? Part of me says yes. Of course. Spare everyone the pain. But another part of me knows the truth. That pain made me who I am. The woman who raised 2 children alone. Who built a business from nothing. Who learned that survival is its own kind of courage. That young girl standing in the hospital hallway, watching her husband kiss another woman through a window. She thought her life was ending. She was wrong. It was beginning. So if you're listening to this and going through something that feels impossible, if someone has betrayed you, if you're scared and alone and don't know how you'll survive tomorrow, let alone next year, let me tell you something. You will survive. Not because it's easy, not because it doesn't hurt, but because you're stronger than you know. Because survival is what women have been doing for centuries. Quietly, stubbornly, one day at a time. You take the pieces of your broken life and you stitch them back together. Maybe not perfectly, maybe the seams show, but you make something new. Something that's entirely yours. And someday, years from now, you'll look back and realize that the worst thing that ever happened to you was also the thing that taught you how strong you really are. That's my story. That's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you for listening to an old woman talk about her past. I know these memories aren't always easy to hear, but I think they matter. I think our stories, especially the hard ones, connect us to each other across time and distance. If this story meant something to you, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to Grandmama Radio. Hit that like button. Turn on notifications. Not for me, really, but for all the other women out there who need to hear they're not alone. That they can survive. That they can thrive. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me your story, if you're comfortable. We're building a community here. A place where women's voices matter. Where our struggles and our victories are honored. Until next time, my dears. Remember you're stronger than you know. And you're never, ever alone.